So this is really just like meant to be a pep talk, or pep talkas, as we call it here in Lithuania. And but I mean, it's not a weird manipulation of you. I'm going to tell you things, and the things are all true. And probably you know all the things, but I'm just going to remind you of the things because it's possible. I'm not saying that you are panicking, but it's possible that you are panicking. You all look a little shell-shocked, certainly. I worry that you may have been up all night. That's great if you did. It's great if you did it because you were working. It's possibly also great if you did it for other reasons. Good on you. Today, however, put that aside, because now we need to focus on what's happening today. So the first thing I want to remind you of is that this is not a competition. This is not a weekend of competitive LARP design. This is a weekend of developing as LARP designers. So your goal today, your goal for the Larporatory is to, wherever you were 3 days ago, today you should know more about LARP design. And I can tell from just having been in the panels that already 100% of you have reached this goal. You're nodding, that's good. That means that in the light of this, the goal of today isn't actually to find out whether you have made a genius LARP. You might find out that also, but that's not the goal. The goal today is to learn about hosting LARPs and playtesting and running your own LARPs. And you're going to learn about running LARPs, both from running your own LARP and from playing other people's LARPs and observing how they are running their LARPs, right? So both of those tasks are quite important. Then there's an additional bonus, which is that maybe your players today will have a great time, or an interesting time, or a great and interesting time. And that's perfect also, that's very cool if it happens, but that's not actually a demand. But for the purposes of the exercise of playtesting today, we're going to focus on that goal. And the reason for that is, I mean, when we've been working on making these LARPs these few days, we have focused very much on the design. Like, what is a good LARP design? And you could say that a measurement of what is good LARP design is, or one very important measurement is predictability of result. If your design is very good, you can run that LARP over and over and over. You can run it 10 times for different people, and they will have, broadly, all of them will have just as good an experience. Then you know that your design is consistent. However, LARP is also such a powerful medium that it's possible to have a really good time, even in the most terrible LARP. And I can tell you this because when I started LARPing a very, very long, like a generation ago, literally, almost all LARPs were terrible. Like, they were really, really bad. But we had a very good time anyway, because that's just how LARP works. So in a way, today, it's kind of irrelevant. Like, the quality of your design as it stands today is kind of irrelevant, because it's possible for your players to have an amazing time today, regardless. If your LARP design isn't very strong, it's probably not possible to predict with certainty that all players would have a good experience with this specific LARP. But that doesn't matter, because you're not going to run it 10 times today. You're only going to run it once. So today the focus is to practice how do you give your participants today a good experience. The first step for that is that starting now, you're going to have to start to think about the LARP that you have. The LARP that you have today, this morning, that is the LARP you will be running today. The LARP that is in your mind, the LARP that you were envisioning on Friday, or the LARP that you thought that you had yesterday at 6 p.m., that LARP is not the LARP you will be running today. Today you run the LARP that you have. And everybody who's going to play these LARPs knows how little time you've had to make it. So don't worry. You don't need to tell them that. They all know. In fact, you probably shouldn't tell them that. I think the most important point for enabling your participants to have a good experience is that you remain calm, you run the LARP you have, or you test the parts of the LARP that you have, if that's where you are. And don't apologize for your work. And don't try to tell them about some other LARP that they're not going to get to play because it's in your head. And like, if you had had 2 more weeks, then maybe they could have played that LARP. Don't tell them about that LARP. They don't care about that LARP. A, that LARP doesn't exist. B, they don't get to play that LARP. So it's just going to be confusing. Run the LARP you have. You can be transparent about the state of your LARP. You can say, this is what we have now. This is what we're going to test. But don't apologize. And when I say that you can be transparent, I mean that you can be honest about things about the LARP. Like, of course, like you can say, as you know, this has never been tested before, so it's very interesting to see what happens, but the purpose is this, or this exercise, or something like that. Don't be very honest about how tired you are, and especially not if you went out drinking shots all night or something like that. Don't be transparent about that, because that's not respectful to your players. You need to sort of LARP a person who has their shit together, even if you're panicking. Today you are role-playing the person who has control and is in charge. Okay. So how do we give our participants a good experience? This is mostly about fundamental human needs. And the basic human needs, says science, is being safe, being seen, and being recognized. And to be able to play, we also need to create a community of players who are prepared to play your LARP, today's LARP that you have today. They're prepared to play that LARP together as a group. And how do we do that? So I think you can think of it that hosting a LARP is a little bit like hosting a party. It's nice if you welcome people when they come to your apartment, especially if you don't know them very well. You sort of meet them at the door and shake their hand perhaps, or at least look them in the eye and say, hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're excited to play today. So just like make sure that they feel that they're in the right place. And I mean, it's polite, but also psychologically it's quite important. It creates a biologically and socially speaking, because we are animals, we're pack animals. So we want to create a situation where people feel that they're allowed to be there and they don't have to worry about that. I think another really practical thing is that maybe, possibly, not everyone actually knows everyone's names, and especially if we're getting some local players, I think it could be nice to use 2 minutes of your workshop time just to like introduce people, especially if you have a 20-person group. It's not realistic, but if you're like 4 people or 8 people, just say hi, maybe even do name tags for the workshop that you can then take off if you use character name tags or something like that, just to help people not feel embarrassed if they don't remember everybody's names. And all of us are from weird cultures relative to each other, so all of us have weird names. So that's just a tiny thing that you can do to help people feel safe and welcome and seen as themselves. And that's actually good, because then it's easier when you play another character afterwards in the sort of after debrief process. You want people to leave their fictional characters and return to their own character, so to speak, to their real life person. And that's easier to do if you have somehow reminded in the workshop people about the fact that they have some kind of identity even before they start role playing. Remain calm. Are you running late setting up your LARP? You almost certainly will be running late, because we don't have a lot of time to set up the LARP. Especially if you're more than 2 people, it might be smart to say, okay, we still need to fold a lot of paper and move this thing and build a mountain of chairs or something, but your job will be to be the host. So one person's job is to be with the players when they arrive and look them in the eye and be calm and not panic, and then the other people can panic. Because then the players will feel like clearly this is intentional and you're totally in control, even when you're not. So you role play that you're in control. But of course you can ask for help if you do it in a calm manner. If you do it like, I don't know if we're going to finish this, we're going to need to build a mountain of, could you help us build a mountain of chairs? That's not going to be, but it's like, okay, the first thing we're going to do together is we're going to build a mountain of chairs. And then people will be happy to help you do that. And actually it's very good, because if solving practical tasks together is the easiest, most efficient team building effort there is. So if you actually can make your participants help you, they will already trust each other more once the actual workshop starts, or once the actual play starts. Yes. If you're tired in the group for any reason, don't bitch amongst yourself. And even if you have like a funny jargon that you're like saying mean things to each other in a funny way, your participants don't know that it's funny, so that's just going to make them feel unsafe. So don't be bitchy to each other in front of them. Like you can do like a bitchy eye or something, a wink at your partner or something like that, but like, don't put a lot of your like internal emotions out. I don't think this would be a problem today, but I've been to a lot of LARPs where the organizers have literally been screaming at each other or the participants. Just as a general rule, in the future when you're running LARPs, don't ever scream at your participants or at other organizers in front of the participants. Just be calm. And what if you mess up? Like, what if something really goes to hell? Well, I mean, if you mess up a little bit, most of the time, 97% of the time, the participants won't know. You can probably just continue because they don't know what's in your mind. But maybe you mess up something, you forget to say something that's actually really important. Then you can say, oh, I'm sorry, let me just back up. Like if you really find that you need to back up a little bit, be transparent about it and say, oh, you know what, let me just back up and do that again. Everybody knows you're running this LARP for the first time. Like it doesn't need to be flawless at this point, as long as it's clear. So don't panic. If you need to give another instruction, just remain calm and say, oh, I realize you need another instruction also, that here it comes, blah, 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 blah. Be calm. Yes. So, unexpected things will happen during your LARP. Some of the things that will be most powerful in your LARP you didn't even think were important, or you didn't design them, they just happen. Remain calm, make a mental note, a nod, and when people say afterwards that you're a genius for putting it in, you say thank you. Some things that you thought were really important will not work. And if people tell you that that part wasn't very important and or didn't work and it was very important for you, you smile and you make a mental note and you say thank you. However, most people will want to like your LARP. Like, they will want passionately to like your LARP because they've already invested all the time. Like, they like you and they come to your thing. And there's something, it's even called the LARP fallacy, which is that even like after a LARP, even when people didn't like it, they are so motivated to like it, so they start to invent reasons for why they actually had a good time, even if they didn't. So basically, you are set up for success. But this also means that actually what we're practicing today is running a LARP and engaging with players. We're not really measuring the quality of your design. You're getting input about your design, you're getting input about the mechanics and what works and what doesn't work, and you make a mental note of that. But that's something you can think about tomorrow. Today you think about the run. Tomorrow you think about your design. Yeah? Also, another really important experience design thing is that science says that when we go through any kind of experience, when we think about it afterwards, 80% of our memory of the thing, like what we even remember, and certainly 80% of what we feel about the thing, come from the last 20% of the time of the experience, and also the sort of peak, the most intense thing that happens in your LARP, and the last things that happen, so probably your debrief. That's going to shape the majority of what people remember from your LARP. So, regardless of how it goes, if you're calm and kind and interested and respectful in the debrief, people are going to say your LARP was amazing. So that's actually a good thing to have with you. Like, again, don't panic. It doesn't ultimately matter very much how the LARP went today. I'm not saying this to suggest that your LARPs aren't finished, because some of them might be finished, and we also know from the process that all of them, 100% of these LARPs are very promising. And it's possible that we're going to have 100% of successful runs today. Probably, you're not going to feel like that when you're running it, because you still remember the LARP that was in your head. However, I think from the participants' point of view, we have every reason to believe that everything will go well. You learn equally much from failures as you do from successes. If you have disasters, don't panic. And yeah, the additional thing is that I think we also know that probably none of these LARPs are actually 100% flawless and finished, because they haven't been tested. So it's statistically incredibly unlikely. But luckily, you're not running them for random LARPers. You're running these LARPs for game designers. And game designers love imperfect games. Because if we play a game that isn't quite, it's not quite finished, then it kicks off all of our brain design, mind. So after it, we're going to be like, oh, that was so interesting. Like that thing that almost worked, and then I could do this. Oh, and you could do this, and you could do this. So actually, again, if you have a perfect run, it's going to be really good. And if you have an imperfect run, the experience for your participants, which is in focus today, is likely to be just as good. And then I just remind you that when the other designers give you good advice, they are basing it entirely on their experience. They don't actually understand the design the way you understand the design. So you can listen to their advice or their design ideas, and you can say thank you. And then you steal the ones that you like. And then you throw out everything that's bullshit from your perspective. And that's also totally valid. That was it. So make sure today that your players are safe, seen, recognized, and create a group of players that can play together. You're going to nail this thing. It's going to be amazing. You are all super talented, and as Bjarke said yesterday, you have finished the second part now of the most prestigious LARP education in the world. Go play!